Captain Kale Virek stared down at the cracked stones beneath his boots, heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the strange markings etched into the surface. The air was thin here, on this barren world at the edge of known space, but what truly held his attention were the ruins sprawled across the canyon floor. Massive pillars and broken statues unlike anything recorded in Orion Pact archives. They said the Terrans were myths, Kale muttered under his breath. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as nothing more than stories, ghosts of an extinct species wiped out in some ancient, forgotten war. Terran civilization was a legend passed down by starship crews to lull themselves to sleep, a violent, brilliant race that vanished, leaving only whispers and scattered relics behind. But here, on this forgotten rock named Valarath IV, Kale found undeniable proof they had once been real. The carvings were unmistakably Terran, a mix of sharp geometric designs and flowing script, symbols known only to a handful of scholars who specialized in ancient Terran languages. The inscriptions spoke of a great departure and guardians of the void. Kyle's breath caught. What had those words meant? And why was this site abandoned so abruptly? His comm crackled. "Captain, sensors detect something. Movement near the ridge." Kale's team turned their heads. Shadows danced just beyond the jagged rocks, and for a fleeting moment, Kale glimpsed a figure cloaked in darkness. "Report," Kale barked, reaching for his sidearm. But before anyone could answer, the figure disappeared like smoke. "Did you see that?" whispered Lieutenant Myra, the expedition's linguist. Her eyes were wide with unease. Kale nodded. "I did. Someone or something is watching us." Back aboard the Vanguard, Kale summoned his officers. The ship's bridge hummed with quiet tension. "Officially," Kale said, "humanity is extinct. But here on Valara 4 we have proof otherwise. That means the Terran Armada, the fleet everyone thought vanished, could still be out there." Commander Joran frowned. "Captain, you realize what you're suggesting? If humans survived, they could be a threat or an ally. We have no idea what they want." Kale leaned forward, eyes sharp. "That's why we need to find out. The legends say Terrans went into hiding after a war that reshaped the galaxy. But something tells me they're not just hiding. They're waiting." The room was silent, the weight of those words settling on everyone. Outside the viewport, the twin suns of Valarath IV dipped low, casting long shadows over the ancient stones. Kale's mind raced through possibilities. What if the humans were preparing to return? And what would that mean for the fragile peace in the Orion Pact? Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared. Multiple unidentified contacts emerging from warp, vectors near the Pale Gulf, the communications officer announced. Unknown ships, all utilizing archaic Terran signatures. Kyle's blood ran cold. The Pale Gulf was a dead zone. No one ventured there. It was a place of myths and whispered. "Warnings, prepare to intercept," Kyle ordered. "Bring us closer." As the Vanguard approached the coordinates, the ship's lights flickered. Power fluctuated. Systems behaved erratically. "Captain, shields are weakening. Something's interfering with our energy fields." Kyle's grip tightened on the console. "Focus all power on defensive arrays. I don't want surprises." Suddenly, a massive silhouette loomed from the darkness, a colossal warship unlike anything in the Pact fleet. Its hull gleamed with cold metal, angular and vast, bearing the unmistakable mark of Terran design. A phoenix rising from shattered stars. "By the stars," whispered Myra. The warship's massive weapons powered up, and Kale could feel the gravity of history bearing down on him. Humanity, once thought lost, was no longer a myth. "They thought we were gone," Kale said, under his breath, "but we were always waiting." The Vanguard braced for the inevitable as the ancient Terran warship opened a communication channel. A cold mechanical voice echoed through the ship. "State your identity and purpose. You have trespassed into Terran space." Kyle's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "I am Captain Kale Virek of the Orion Pact. We seek knowledge, not war." The silence that followed was heavier than the void itself. Then, from the darkness, a single transmission came through. "We are awake." The message haunted Captain Kale Virek like a shadow that wouldn't lift. "We are awake." Those words echoed through the Vanguard's communication systems long after the Terran warship had vanished back into the inky blackness of space. Kale paced the bridge, the worn metal floor creaking under his boots. Around him, the officers exchanged uneasy glances, none daring to break the heavy silence. No one understood what that cryptic phrase truly meant, only that it marked a turning point. "Captain," Lieutenant Myra said, breaking the silence. "We've been scanning the Pale Gulf for more signals. The area was supposed to be empty, dead, but there's a pattern, something buried beneath the static." Kyle nodded. "Run the decryptor on the signal again. See if there's more than just those 4 words." The ship's chief communications officer, Ensign Rahl, adjusted his console. The screen flickered as lines of data streamed in, then slowed as the decryptor processed the ancient Terran encryption. Symbols and patterns emerged, forming fragments of messages, coordinates, warnings, and references to the Great Watch and the Sleeper Fleet. "These aren't random transmissions," Myra said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a message, an alert, something Terrans wanted us to find." Kyle's gut tightened. The Pale Gulf was a no-go zone, a dead sector where warp drives malfunctioned and ships disappeared without trace. No packed fleet dared enter, and the few probes sent never returned. But if the Terrans had been hiding there, the legends might be more fact than fiction. "Prepare a reconnaissance mission," Kale ordered. "Small crew stealth mode. We need to know what's out there before anyone else does." The Vanguard's stealth shuttle slipped silently toward the Pale Gulf, its hull dark against the stars. Kyle volunteered to lead the team, driven by the gnawing need to understand the truth about humanity. As they neared the dead zone, the ship's systems flickered again. Power dipped and surged unpredictably. The shuttle's AI warned of gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic interference. But Kale pressed on. "Hold tight," he said. "Whatever's here, it's ancient and dangerous." Suddenly, the shuttle's sensors registered movement. Massive shapes drifted in the void, hulking starships encrusted with the wear of centuries. Their designs were unmistakably Terran, yet unlike any blueprints recorded in Pact archives. These ships were colossal, armed with weaponry that hummed with quiet menace. Kyle's breath caught. "What is this place?" "Ghost Fleet," whispered Myra. "The Sleeper Fleet. They were meant to remain lost forever." Suddenly, a piercing alarm sounded. An energy net latched onto the shuttle, dragging it helplessly toward one of the ancient warships. The shuttle's engines strained, but the tractor beam was too strong. Inside the ship's command center, a holographic figure flickered to life. Tall, with sharp features and glowing eyes, his voice was cold, metallic. "You have trespassed into Terran territory. Identify yourselves." Kale swallowed hard. "We are explorers from the Orion Pact. We seek only knowledge and peace." The hologram studied them for a moment, then nodded. "You have questions. You shall have answers, but at a price." The shuttle was pulled into a docking bay, where ancient machinery creaked to life. The crew was ushered inside a cavernous chamber filled with dormant soldiers, human in form but clad in armor that shimmered with energy. "The Great Watch," Myra whispered. "Guardians of the Terran legacy." The hologram introduced himself as Guardian 09, an AI programmed to protect the fleet and its secrets. He explained that humanity had chosen exile millennia ago, retreating to the Pale Gulf to escape a cataclysmic war with a relentless enemy known as the Silicate Swarm, a swarm of self-replicating machines bent on annihilation. "We went dark to preserve what remained," Guardian 09 said. "But now the swarm has returned. The time to awaken the fleet has come." Kale felt a chill. This wasn't just history, it was a warning, a call to arms that had been waiting in the shadows. "We must warn the Orion Pact," Kale said urgently. "This threat, this swarm is coming." Guardian 09's eyes glowed brighter. "The fleet will rise again and humanity will no longer be a myth." As the shuttle crew prepared to leave, Kale's comm crackled with new reports. Ships across the galaxy were detecting the same strange signals, ancient Terran coordinates lighting up in the void. The legends were waking, and so was humanity's Armada. The Vanguard shuddered as it broke free from the pale Gulf's oppressive grip. Captain Kelvirek's eyes remained fixed on the viewscreen, where the hulking shadows of the ancient Terran warships still lingered like ghosts against the backdrop of stars. The message from Guardian 09 rang in his mind, heavy and unyielding. The fleet will rise again. Back aboard the flagship of the Orion Pact, the tension was palpable. News had spread like wildfire. Ancient Terran warships, thought lost to time and myth, were activating across the galaxy. Fleets that no one had believed existed were powering up in dark corners of space, and the mysterious enemy, the Silicate Swarm, loomed ever closer, threatening annihilation on a scale none had seen. "Captain," Commander Joran said, approaching Kale on the bridge, "we have confirmation. Over a dozen Terran warships have emerged from stasis pods in the last 48 hours. Entire sectors are reporting automated systems coming online, weapon platforms charging." Kyle nodded grimly. "This isn't just a warning anymore. It's an awakening." The Orion Pact scrambled its fleets, sending urgent messages, recalling ships, and trying to make sense of the sudden reappearance of humanity's lost Armada. But the Terran ships operated on unfamiliar protocols, cold, precise, and utterly ruthless. Attempts to communicate met with silence or curt-coded replies that chilled even the most seasoned diplomats. In a grand hall on the capital world of Lyrax Prime, the leaders of the Orion Pact gathered for an emergency summit. Representatives from dozens of races argued fiercely over what the Terran return meant. "They are a threat," thundered Ambassador Threk of the Varlock hegemony. "Their power eclipses all. We must prepare to strike first." "No," countered the Arcsea delegate calmly. "The Terrans saved the galaxy once before. Perhaps they return as guardians." Kale stood among the observers, his presence a lightning rod for suspicion and fear. Many whispered that he was compromised, a puppet of the Terran resurgence. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open. A messenger, breathless and wide-eyed, announced, "The Silicate Swarm has breached the outer colonies. Systems are falling faster than we can respond." The room fell into chaos. Kale's mind raced. The Silicate Swarm, the same enemy the Terrans had fought and vanished to escape, was back, and it was unstoppable. Days later, aboard the Vanguard, Kale stared at a holographic display showing the swarm's advance. Thousands of crystalline drones, self-replicating and endlessly adaptable, devouring planets and fleets alike. "Without the Terran Armada, we lose everything," Kale said quietly. "But can we trust them? They never spoke to us. Not once." A crackle came from the The voice was cold and unyielding, an admiral's tone, clipped and authoritative. "This is Admiral Ilara Keen of the Terran fleet. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation." The bridge fell silent. Ilara's hologram flickered into view. Sharp eyes, steel gray hair, and a presence that commanded respect. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge of something deeper, something that spoke of battles won and sacrifices made. "We fought the swarm before," she continued. "We went dark to regroup, to rebuild. Now we return to finish the war." Kale's chest tightened. This was no diplomatic courtesy call. It was an ultimatum. "Your fleets are awakening," Ilara said. "Join us, or be swept aside. The swarm does not negotiate." Within hours, the Terran warships spread across the front lines, their sleek, angular hulls cutting through swarm clusters with devastating efficiency. Energy weapons far beyond the Pact's technology carved swaths through the enemy, and automated defense systems reconfigured instantly to new threats. But the Terran tactics were merciless. Entire worlds were evacuated, then quarantined or destroyed, to prevent swarm infection. Colonies that resisted were crushed without hesitation. Pact leaders watched in horror and awe as the humans enacted their cold logic, saving the galaxy, but at a cost none dared voice aloud. Kale grappled with his conflicting loyalties. Was humanity the guardian they'd hoped for, or a new tyrant emerging from the ashes of legend? As the battle raged, Kale received a private summons from Admiral Keen herself. In the Stark command room aboard her flagship, Kale faced the woman, who embodied humanity's return. "You brought us here," she said bluntly, "and now you must decide where you stand." Her eyes held no malice, only the weight of inevitability. "We fight the swarm," Kale replied, "but we must also protect the galaxy's freedom." Keen's lips curved into a brief, approving nod. "The war is not over," she said, "and neither is the price. But together, we might just survive." Outside, the stars burned cold, and the ancient Armada stirred from its long sleep. The myths had become flesh, steel, and fire. Humanity was awake. The Grand Hall of Lyrax Prime was a colossal dome of polished crystalline steel, designed to inspire unity among the many races of the Orion Pact. Instead, it now echoed with shouts, accusations, and thinly veiled threats. The arrival of the Terran Armada had fractured the fragile alliance into jagged pieces. Captain Kale Virek stood near the back, watching as delegates argued over humanity's sudden return. "They lied to us." Ambassador Threk of the Varlock. Hegemony slammed his gauntleted fist on the table. "For centuries we believed the Terrans were extinct. Now they appear, weapons ready, without warning. How can we trust them?" The Arcsy envoy, a calm figure with silver-blue skin, countered, "They returned because the silicate swarm is real. We are fighting for survival. Do you have a better plan?" But voices from the Galactic Union, a coalition of smaller worlds, cried out against the Terran military occupation of key sectors. "Their methods are brutal. Quarantines, forced evacuations, our people suffer." Kyle felt the room's tension spike as accusations grew louder. The summit, intended to unite the pact against the swarm, was unraveling. Suddenly, the chamber's energy dampers flared, communications flickered, and an emergency alert blared across the hall. "The silicate swarm has breached the outer colonies," an official announced grimly. "Entire systems are lost within hours." Panic rippled through the delegates. Some screamed for immediate military action. Others whispered that surrender might be the only option. Amid the chaos, Kale was approached by a figure cloaked in shadow. "You're Captain Kale Virek," the voice whispered, rough and urgent. "You need to leave. Now." Kale's brow furrowed. "Who are you?" "No time." The figure handed him a small data crystal before disappearing into the crowd. Kale slipped the crystal into his wrist console, activating its encrypted contents in a private chamber. The files revealed intercepted communications, coded transmissions between several high-ranking officials plotting to sabotage the Terran effort. "A coup," Kale muttered. "They want to destroy the Armada before it can fight the swarm." Back in the summit, Kale tried to warn the delegates, but his voice was drowned out by suspicion and disbelief. "You're compromised," accused a senator from the Krelian Dominion. "Working with the Terrans to undermine our sovereignty." Kale's eyes burned with determination. "This is bigger than politics. If the Terran Armada falls, the swarm will consume us all." Despite his pleas, Kale was declared a traitor and stripped of command. His ship was grounded, and he was placed under guard. But the data crystal had already been sent to trusted allies within the Pact's intelligence networks. Meanwhile, deep in orbit around a distant moon, a small rogue fleet prepared to act on the coup's plan. Led by Admiral Verak, a veteran hardened by decades of border skirmishes, the rogue faction viewed the Terran Armada as a threat to their autonomy. "Humanity's return means the end of our freedom," Verak declared, addressing his officers. "We will strike first. We will destroy their fleet and take their technology for ourselves." His forces readied weapons primed for sabotage, boarding craft equipped for covert assaults. Back on Lyrax Prime, Kale's second-in-command, Lieutenant Myra, risked everything to smuggle him off the planet. "We need to expose the coup," she said fiercely. "The swarm doesn't care who controls the galaxy, it will destroy us all." Kyle nodded. "Then we act fast, before this summit shatters completely." Together they commandeered a stealth frigate and jumped into the void, pursuing leads from the data crystal. In the dark corridors of the Vanguard, Kale confronted the difficult truth. The galaxy was fractured not only by an ancient enemy, but by fear, greed, and mistrust within. The Terran Armada's arrival was not just a military awakening. It was a catalyst, exposing the fragile alliances and simmering tensions beneath the Pact's surface. As the swarm advanced relentlessly, the fragile threads holding the galaxy together threatened to snap. Kyle knew the stakes had never been higher. They were fighting, not just for survival, but for the future of every star in the sky. The cold void outside the Vanguard's viewport was suddenly shattered by a cascade of pulsating lights, thousands of shimmering points converging into a monstrous shape. The silicate swarm had arrived. Kale Virek's jaw tightened as his crew scrambled to battle stations. The star systems along the outer rim were under siege, entire fleets obliterated, colonies swallowed whole by the relentless advance of the crystalline machines. The swarm was a nightmare made real, self-replicating, evolving with terrifying speed and utterly remorseless. Enemy vessels detected at 18,000 clicks and closing fast, the tactical officer reported, voice tight with tension. They're adapting to our weapons. Kale's fingers danced over the console. Raise shields, prepare countermeasures. But even as the Vanguard's systems powered up, the overwhelming force of the swarm closed the distance with deadly precision. Energy beams cut through space like blades, reducing smaller vessels to drifting wrecks in seconds. Suddenly, a ripple tore through the battlefield, wormholes tearing open like wounds in the fabric of space. From these ruptures, massive warships surged forward, sleek, angular, and humming with raw power. The Terran Armada had arrived. The Terran warships advanced in perfect formation, their weaponry unlike anything the Pact had seen. Plasma lances that could pierce entire drone clusters, shield generators that absorbed and redirected attacks, and automated drones that repaired hull breaches in real time. Hold the line. Admiral Alara Keen's voice echoed through the Vanguard's comms. We will not let this swarm consume another world. The battle erupted in a brutal, chaotic dance of light and destruction. Swarm drones swarmed like locusts, overwhelming systems and weapons alike, but the Terran ships moved with chilling efficiency, an unyielding wall of destruction. Kale watched in awe and horror as entire drone swarms were vaporized in moments. Yet the Terran commanders did not hesitate to sacrifice anything to hold the line. Civilian habitats were evacuated and, when necessary, destroyed to deny the swarm resources. Collateral damage? Kyle whispered, eyes locked on a burning colony under Terran quarantine protocols. Admiral Keen's voice cut through his comm. Survival demands hard choices, Captain. We fight not just to win, but to ensure no life is consumed by the swarm. Kale clenched his fists. The Terrans' cold logic was as frightening as their firepower. As the battle raged, Kale's shuttle darted through the chaos toward a damaged Terran cruiser. Inside, he met a squad of elite Terran Marines, silent, heavily armored soldiers, whose eyes burned with quiet resolve. We've been waiting for you, said Sergeant Halden, his voice low but unwavering. The swarm learns fast. Our only hope is to strike at its core. Kyle nodded. What's the plan? The swarm's command nexus lies deep within the dark nebula. If we can destroy it, the drones will lose coordination and fall apart. Kale's mind raced. The mission was suicide, but the alternative was extinction. Then we do it, he said. The shuttle slipped through the nebula's swirling clouds, the Vanguard and Terran fleet providing cover fire against relentless drone attacks. Inside the nebula, sensors went dark. The silence was suffocating. Suddenly, from the shadows, massive swarm constructs erupted, gigantic spider-like machines bristling with weapons and armored in living metal. The Marines fired with precision, but the creatures adapted swiftly. Kale's shuttle was rocked by explosions, alarms blaring. Brace for impact, Kale shouted. The battle turned into a brutal fight for survival as the shuttle weaved through the mechanical nightmare. Sergeant Halden and his team fought fiercely, buying Kale time to reach the Nexus. With seconds to spare, Kale deployed a plasma bomb onto the Nexus core. The explosion rocked the nebula, sending shockwaves that shattered the swarm's control network. Back on the Vanguard, sensors flickered as the swarm's drones lost cohesion. Clusters broke apart, drifting aimlessly. The battle turned. The Terran Armada pressed the advantage, pushing the swarm back toward the Galactic core. Kyle exhaled, relief and dread twisting inside him. They had won a critical victory, but the war was far from over. Admiral Keen's voice came through again, steady and cold. This victory is ours for now. The swarm is relentless. We must be prepared to pay any price. Kale looked at the stars, scarred but still burning bright. The galaxy was saved, for today. But the true fight was only just beginning. The calm after the battle was deceptive. Though the silicate swarm had been pushed back, the scars it left behind were fresh and deep. The Vanguard floated in the stillness of space, its hull scarred and systems battered. But the greatest threat no longer lurked in the void. It was inside. Captain Kyle Virek sat alone in the command chamber, staring at the star charts. The swarm's defeat should have been a cause for celebration, yet a shadow hung over the fleet, thick and suffocating. "Captain?" Lieutenant Myra's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We've intercepted encrypted transmissions from within the Armada." Kale's eyes narrowed. "From whom?" "Unknown, but the codes match Terran military protocols. Someone inside is sending unauthorized messages." Kale's heart sank. The very fleet meant to protect the galaxy might harbor traitors. On the bridge, alarms suddenly blared. The Vanguard's sensors detected an unauthorized boarding party approaching. "Boarders incoming!" the tactical officer shouted. Kale grabbed his sidearm and rallied the crew. The doors hissed open as shadowy figures in stealth armor slipped inside. Fierce firefights erupted in the corridors. The intruders moved with deadly efficiency, trained operatives, not desperate raiders. Kale fought alongside his men, pushing back the attackers. But amid the chaos, a chilling realization struck him. These were not silicate drones, but humans, members of the Terran Armada. "Saboteurs," Myra whispered grimly. "They want to cripple us from within." The ship's comm crackled. A distorted voice spoke, cold and commanding. "This is Admiral Verak. The Terran Armada is a threat to galactic freedom. We will purge its command and seize control." Kyle's blood ran cold. "Verak, the rogue admiral plotting the coup. Myra, seal off the lower decks. We can't let them reach the command core." But Verak's forces were relentless. As the battle stretched through the ship, Kale realized this fight wasn't just for survival. It was for the very soul of the Armada. In a secure chamber, Kale confronted the lead saboteur, a cold-eyed officer named Commander Rin. "Why betray your own fleet?" Kyle demanded. Rin's smile was bitter. "Because the Armada's methods are tyranny in disguise. They sacrifice lives without question. We fight for freedom, freedom from Terran rule." Kyle shook his head. "If we fall, the swarm consumes all. There's no freedom in extinction." Rin's expression hardened. "Then you're a fool." Meanwhile, aboard Admiral Keen's flagship, whispers of dissent spread like wildfire. Some Terran commanders questioned her ruthless strategies, calling her the cold hand of extinction. Others feared her vision for a galaxy united under Terran rule. Keen herself remained steely and unyielding. "The galaxy will be saved through strength and sacrifice," she told her officers. "Those who cannot accept this will fall behind." Yet the seeds of rebellion had taken root and loyalty was fracturing. Kale returned to the bridge, battered but unbroken. The boarding party was repelled, but the cost was high. "Myra," he said quietly, "we need to find out who else is involved. This conspiracy runs deeper than we thought." She nodded. "I'm tracing the transmissions now. We'll find them." As the Vanguard limped back toward the fleet, Kale knew this internal war was only beginning. The external threat of the swarm was terrifying, but the darkness inside their own ranks was just as deadly. That night, in the dim glow of the ship's command deck, Kale stared out at the stars and wondered, could the Terran Armada, the galaxy's last hope, survive its own shadows, or would internal betrayal doom them all? The Vanguard cut through space like a wounded predator, its hull scarred, its crew exhausted but resolute. Captain Kale Virek refused to let the darkness within the fleet break them. Not yet. The encrypted transmissions Lieutenant Myra had traced led to a hidden relay station inside a remote asteroid belt, long abandoned and outside official star charts. If the conspirators were coordinating here, it was the perfect place for secrets to fester. "Prepare a strike team," Kyle ordered. "We end this now." Myra nodded, gathering the best of their remaining forces, sharpshooters, engineers, and a few trusted Terran Marines. Among them was Sergeant Halden, the battle-hardened veteran who had fought alongside Kale against the Silicate Swarm. The shuttle slipped quietly into the asteroid belt's shadow, sensors scanning for traps. As they neared the relay station, a battered, half-derelict outpost nestled inside a jagged asteroid. The tension was thick enough to cut. Inside the station, the team moved swiftly but cautiously. The halls were dim, power flickering in uneven pulses. Communications equipment hummed faintly, a ghostly reminder that someone was still using this place to send deadly messages. Suddenly, alarms blared. "They knew we were coming," Halden growled. "Get ready." As hostile forces poured from hidden compartments, rogue Terran soldiers loyal to Admiral Verak, the battle erupted in brutal close quarters. The station's narrow corridors echoed with gunfire and shouted commands. Kale fought with grim determination, his sidearm blazing as he pushed forward with the team. Myra worked feverishly to disable the station's comm array, cutting off the conspirators' network. At last, they reached the command center. On a cracked holo display, Kale's eyes locked onto a live transmission of Admiral Verak's face, cold, hard and unyielding. "To all loyal factions," Verak's voice boomed, "the Terran Armada has betrayed the galaxy. It seeks only domination, using the swarm as an excuse to impose control. We will strike at their core. The future belongs to those who fight for freedom." Kyle clenched his fists. "Cut the feed," he ordered. Myra's fingers flew over the controls, severing the transmission. But before they could rest, Verak's voice echoed again from the speakers. "And Captain Kale Virek, you will fall with the rest." A trapdoor slid open beneath their feet. The floor gave way, plunging Kyle and the team into a dark, sprawling cavern beneath the station. The chamber was filled with dormant swarm drones, millions of them, slumbering in eerie silence, wired into a crude command matrix. The conspirators planned to unleash the swarm as a weapon against the Terran Armada itself. Kale's heart pounded. "We have to destroy this place," he said urgently, "or the whole galaxy will burn." The team planted charges throughout the cavern. As the timer ticked down, they fought off waves of Verak's loyalists, the swarm of rogue soldiers desperate to stop them. With seconds remaining, Kale detonated the charges. A cascade of explosions ripped through the cavern, obliterating the command matrix and sending the sleeping drones into a frenzy. Alarms blared as the station began to collapse. Back on the Vanguard, Kale and the survivors raced to the shuttle. The station erupted behind them in a fiery explosion, the asteroid belt lighting up like a dying star. As they escaped into space, Kyle stared back, the weight of sacrifice heavy on his soul. The betrayal was real. The enemy within nearly destroyed them all, but the Terran Armada had survived, for now. In the aftermath, Kyle stood before the fleet commanders, the truth laid bare. "We face enemies on two fronts," he warned. "The Silicate Swarm threatens our existence, but so do those who would tear us apart from within." The commanders exchanged uneasy glances. Trust was fragile. Admiral Keene's voice cut through the tension. "We rebuild, we fight, and we root out the rot before it destroys us." Kale nodded. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, but this betrayal, this darkness in their midst had been unveiled. And now, the true war could begin. The Vanguard led the combined fleet into the heart of the Silicate Swarm's advance, an uncharted star system where the crystalline horde had concentrated its forces, preparing a final devastating assault on the core colonies of the Orion Pact. Captain Kyle Virek stood on the bridge, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Every moment millions of lives hung in the balance, Admiral Keen, Cale said, voice steady despite the storm inside him. We face the swarm's largest offensive yet. This battle will decide the fate of the galaxy. Elara Keen's hologram flickered to life beside him, her eyes fierce and unyielding. We fight not just for survival, she said, but for a future where humanity and all species can stand united. The battle erupted like a supernova. Swarm ships surged from there, breeding grounds. Gigantic crystalline dreadnoughts, swarming corvettes, and terrifying biomechanical horrors. Their energy beams shredded shields. Their razor-sharp limbs tore through hulls. But the Terran Armada responded with devastating precision. Plasma lances lanced through the enemy ranks. Automated drones swarmed to repair breaches instantly. The Armada's flagship, the Aegis, unleashed a new weapon. A pulse cannon capable of destabilizing the swarm's crystalline structures at a molecular level. Kyle coordinated with precision, directing fleets, setting traps, and exploiting every weakness. In the midst of the chaos, Cale led a strike team aboard the Aegis to the swarm's command ship, a massive living fortress pulsating with eerie light. The boarding party fought through biomechanical horrors and shifting corridors, alive with alien intelligence. At the heart of the ship, Cale faced the swarm's neural core, a massive crystalline brain glowing with malevolent power. "Destroy that core," Sergeant Halden ordered, eyes blazing. Cale planted the charges with trembling hands, the countdown ticking in his ear. Suddenly, the core pulsed violently. A psychic wave surged through the chamber, threatening to overwhelm their minds. Cale gritted his teeth, focusing on the mission. Outside, the fleet pressed the attack as the pulse cannon charged for its final blast. The swarm's forces began to falter, their coordination breaking. The pulse cannon fired, a brilliant, devastating wave that shattered the swarm's command network, sending their ships into chaos. Back on the command ship, the charges detonated. The neural core exploded in a blinding cascade of energy, fracturing the swarm's control and triggering a chain reaction that tore the ship apart. Kyle and the survivors escaped just as the command ship disintegrated, its death throes echoing across the battlefield. The swarm's retreat was swift and total. The Terran Armada and the Orion-packed fleets pursued, cutting down fleeing drones and reclaiming lost systems. As the dust settled, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. In the aftermath, the summit on Lyrax Prime reconvened, this time with a new spirit of unity. The Terran Armada's sacrifice and leadership had earned wary respect. Kyle Virek addressed the assembly, his voice firm and hopeful. "We faced extinction and internal betrayal, but we stood together. The galaxy is not won by one race alone. It is won by all of us, united." Admiral Keen stepped forward, nodding in agreement. Humanity is back, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The stars outside gleamed with new hope. The myths of humanity had become legend, yes, but also reality. They had returned not as myths, but as the architects of the galaxy's dawn, and the future, vast and unknown, awaited the end.